The Persistent Hunter, Best HFY Stories. In the far-flung future, humanity had expanded across the stars, spreading its influence across countless planets, forging alliances, and waging wars. But no matter how far humans traveled, they carried with them an innate quality that none could ignore: persistence. It was a characteristic deeply embedded in their psyche, cultivated by millennia of survival against all odds. And one man, a relentless hunter, was about to show the galaxy just what that persistence truly meant. The first encounter had been on a barren world, a place where few dared to tread. The planet was a wasteland, a graveyard of failed colonies and forgotten civilizations. Yet, for Hunter, it was the perfect place to begin his mission. The job was simple enough: track down a rogue alien warlord who had been causing trouble in the region. Hunter had been chosen for the task not because of his skill in combat, but because of his reputation for one thing: never giving up. The warlord had been hiding among the ruins of the old city, surrounded by loyal followers. But that was no matter for Hunter. Armed with nothing but a simple blade and a rifle, he set out to find his prey. It didn't take long for the warlord's men to notice him. They came in waves, fierce and armed to the teeth, but Hunter cut through them with ease. He didn't care about numbers, strategy, or even tactics. He simply hunted. The warlord, realizing that his forces were falling one by one, took to the skies in a sleek starship, fleeing the surface in search of safety. But he had underestimated the most dangerous thing about humanity: its relentless pursuit. Hunter wasn't a fast runner or a master of advanced technology, but he was a man who had the tenacity to keep going long after others would have turned back. His ship, an old freighter, roared to life as he blasted into the void, setting a course for the warlord's ship. 4 hours. They fought in space, Hunter closing in, never stopping, refusing to give in to the vastness of space that stretched out around him. His ship's engines sputtered and strained, but Hunter kept it flying, a man and his vessel against the infinite. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he closed the distance and boarded the warlord's ship. The battle that ensued was brutal, but it was clear who would win. Hunter wasn't just skilled, he was patient, and he would stop at nothing to finish the job. The warlord, cornered and beaten, begged for mercy, but there was no mercy in Hunter. He had come for one thing only: the capture of the enemy. And so, with a final, decisive blow, he ended the warlord's reign of terror. Hunter's reputation spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Word of his persistence and unwavering resolve reached every corner of the known universe. He was no longer just a hunter. He was an embodiment of humanity's greatest trait: its refusal to ever back down. From that day on, whenever a new threat emerged, or a dangerous enemy appeared, people would whisper, "Send for the persistent hunter." And no matter how insurmountable the odds seemed, Hunter would appear, never failing, never surrendering. The galaxy came to learn an undeniable truth: humanity, for all its flaws, could be the most dangerous species in the universe. Not because of its technology or its vast armies, but because when a human set their mind to something, nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The Persistent Hunter, Best HFY Stories Part 2. The next mission came sooner than expected. The galaxy, as vast as it was, had no shortage of enemies. A new threat had emerged: a coalition of alien races, each with their own advanced technology and vast fleets. They called themselves the Syndicate, and they had been causing havoc across the galaxy, enslaving entire civilizations and crushing any resistance that stood in their way. The Syndicate believed that they could break any species they came across, that no civilization, no matter how resilient, could withstand their might. They saw themselves as an unstoppable force, destined to rule the stars. But they hadn't reckoned with humanity. The call went out, and once again, the name Hunter became a symbol of hope and terror. Humanity's enemies had heard the stories of his relentless pursuit, his ability to find and eliminate the most dangerous threats. The Syndicate would soon learn the truth: persistence was not a weakness, it was a weapon. Hunter was given his orders: infiltrate the Syndicate's home world, disable their command structure, and cripple their operations. It seemed like a near impossible task. The Syndicate's fortress world was heavily fortified, surrounded by fleets of warships and defended by some of the most advanced technology known to any species. But Hunter had never backed down from an impossible mission before. He boarded his ship, now outfitted with new upgrades, cloaking devices, advanced tracking systems, and improved weaponry. But even with all the technology at his disposal, it was not these enhancements that would carry him through. It was his persistence, his absolute refusal to give in, no matter the odds. Hunter infiltrated the Syndicate's defenses, slipping past patrols and evading detection. He had spent years perfecting the art of being a ghost, learning every trick and technique to stay out of sight. But even when he was discovered, when the alarms blared, and the Syndicate's forces closed in around him, he kept moving. There was no hesitation in his actions, no sign of fear. There was only the drive to finish what he had started. Hunter was relentless, methodical. He sabotaged their weapons systems, destroyed their communication towers, and left a trail of chaos in his wake. The Syndicate, for all their power and resources, couldn't keep up with his movements. They had underestimated the one thing that had always made humanity so dangerous. They believed they could be stopped. But Hunter was the embodiment of humanity's refusal to stop. Even when the Syndicate unleashed their most terrifying weapon, a massive, planet-destroying dreadnought, Hunter didn't flinch. He faced it head-on, using his knowledge of their technology and his tactical genius to exploit the ship's weaknesses. With a precision strike, he disabled the dreadnought, sending the Syndicate into disarray. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. A lone human, against the might of an empire, tearing down their power one victory at a time. As the Syndicate's leaders scrambled to regain control, they found themselves hunted, their empire slowly crumbling beneath the unyielding persistence of a single human. Back on Earth, the stories of Hunter's victories were told in hushed tones, with reverence and awe. Other species watched in disbelief as the once fragmented humans rallied behind their lone hero. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for far too long, and now it was becoming clear, this species would not be crushed. They would not bow. They would not break. Hunter didn't seek glory or fame, nor did he care for the accolades he received. For him, the mission was always the same: find the enemy, fight, and never stop until the job was done. It was a simple creed, but one that made him an unstoppable force. With the Syndicate broken, Hunter's name became a symbol of defiance, of hope. It was said that wherever injustice reared its head, wherever the weak were oppressed, the persistent Hunter would arrive, and he would bring the fight. Because, as everyone now knew, there was one thing you could always count on when humanity was involved: they would keep coming, and they would win. End of Part 2. The Persistent Hunter, Best HFY Stories, Part 3. The third mission was one unlike any before. The galaxy had been in an uneasy peace for a while, but peace, as the universe had learned, was often just the calm before the storm. A new, even more terrifying threat had emerged from the darkest corners of space, a race known only as the Reavers. The Reavers were not like any enemy humanity had faced before. They were a collective species, a massive, hive-like entity that had assimilated and evolved countless different forms of life. The Reavers were cold, calculating, and devoid of any emotion. They saw all other species as inferior, a means to an end. They absorbed entire planets, erasing the civilizations on them in a cold, mechanical process, and they had set their sights on humanity. Hunter was summoned once again, this time not just as a warrior, but as a symbol. His victories against the Syndicate and countless other enemies had already become legendary. But the Reavers were something different. Their strength was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Entire fleets had already fallen to their unyielding advance, and many believed it was only a matter of time before Earth itself would fall. But there was something the Reavers didn't understand, what they lacked in emotion and empathy. They couldn't comprehend in humanity's drive. The cold, relentless hive mind of the Reavers could not grasp the one thing that made humanity truly unstoppable: the will to fight, even when victory seemed impossible. Hunter's mission was clear: stop the Reavers from assimilating Earth. But how could one man face an enemy that seemed to know no fear, no weakness? The first step was infiltration. The Reavers had set up a massive outpost on the edge of the solar system, where they were conducting experiments to weaken humanity's defenses. Hunter's ship, now equipped with even more advanced stealth technology, slipped past the outpost's defenses without detection. It wasn't the technology that allowed him to succeed, though; it was his uncanny ability to adapt. The Reavers were creatures of logic and precision, and in their obsession with efficiency, They never accounted for the unpredictable nature of a single human. Hunter sabotaged their operations, making his way deeper into the heart of their base. Along the way, he discovered something horrifying. The Reavers were in the process of creating a machine capable of controlling human minds, turning entire populations into obedient drones. It was a weapon unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. His heart hardened with a single thought: Earth could not fall. Not now. Not ever. Hunter knew he couldn't take down the entire Reaver force on his own, but he didn't need to. He had something they did not: the ability to rally others. As he infiltrated deeper into their compound, he contacted the remaining free human fleets and sent out a distress signal. It was a long shot, but it was the only chance humanity had. The Reavers caught wind of his presence and sent their elite enforcers to track him down. Hunter fought tooth and nail, outwitting and outlasting them at every turn. There was no end to the waves of Reaver forces that came after him, but Hunter didn't care. He knew his time was limited. The longer he drew their attention, the more time the human fleets would have to mount their counterattack. The final confrontation came inside the Reavers' most powerful fortress, a massive citadel floating in the heart of their outpost. The machine that could control minds was nearly complete. Time was running out. Hunter had made it inside, but the room was crawling with Reaver soldiers, tens of thousands, their cold eyes scanning for the human intruder. They underestimated him again. Hunter's persistence was his weapon. Every move, every plan, was calculated with the precision of someone who had fought and survived every conceivable scenario. He used every piece of technology at his disposal, hacking into the Reaver systems, causing chaos and confusion, and slowly, systematically, bringing their defenses down. It was the most dangerous game of cat and mouse he had ever played, but in the end, it was his perseverance that won out. When he finally reached the machine, the last line of defense was in place: the Reaver Queen herself, a massive, terrifying creature that controlled the hive mind of the entire race. She was a being of pure intellect, a creature of infinite knowledge and logic, but she had never faced anything like Hunter before. The two of them clashed in the heart of the citadel. The Reaver Queen's intellect was formidable, but Hunter's will was unbreakable. No matter how many times she predicted his next move, he would always find a way around her. Every time she thought she had cornered him, Hunter adapted, refusing to back down. The battle raged for hours, but in the end, it was Hunter who emerged victorious. With a single, decisive strike, he disabled the mind control machine and destroyed the Reaver Queen. The galaxy watched in awe as the unstoppable Reaver threat crumbled, shattered by the sheer determination of one man. As Earth celebrated its survival, the galaxy stood in silent admiration. The Reavers were gone, their plan thwarted by the human who refused to accept defeat. The legend of the persistent hunter had become more than just a tale, it had become a testament to the power of the human spirit. For Hunter, it was just another mission completed. No fanfare, no recognition, just the satisfaction of knowing the job had been done. He had faced the greatest threat the universe had ever known and emerged victorious, not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through the one thing no enemy could ever defeat: persistence. The galaxy had learned one final truth: never underestimate humanity. For as long as there were humans like Hunter, no enemy would ever truly win. They could take everything: planets, fleets, even entire civilizations, but they could never take the will of a single human. And as long as that will remained, there would always be someone ready to stand in the way. Always. End of Part 3. The Persistent Hunter, Best HFY Stories, Part 4. It had been months since Hunter had obliterated the Reaver threat. The galaxy had settled into a calm, though the echoes of his triumph still lingered across every star system. Stories of his relentless pursuit of justice spread like wildfire, and while many cheered for his success, others grew wary. For the first time in history, a single human had become the galaxy's greatest symbol of resistance. But that very symbol now carried with it an undeniable weight. Hunter's name was becoming as much a burden as it was a legend. The universe had taken notice. The Empyrean Coalition, a vast alliance of powerful alien species, now looked at Earth with a mix of curiosity and unease. They were a race of highly evolved beings who saw themselves as the natural rulers of the galaxy, a force that believed all species should fall in line. The Empyrean had watched as Hunter and humanity had toppled one enemy after another. The Reavers had fallen. The syndicate had been dismantled, and many smaller factions had been wiped out in his wake. The coalition had a simple question: could humanity, with its relentless spirit, be allowed to roam freely among the stars? The answer, they believed, was no. The message came through one cold, silent night, a communiqué from the Empyrean High Council. The content was simple, but chilling. We have seen what your kind is capable of. Your persistence is a threat to the balance of the galaxy. We hereby demand your complete surrender to the Empyrean coalition. Failure to comply will result in the immediate destruction of your homeworld. You have 1 week. The message was sent across every major channel, every communications network, and every frequency known to the galaxy. Earth was being given an ultimatum. The galaxy's most powerful force had spoken, and it was clear, they saw humanity's persistence as a dangerous, uncontrollable force. They believed Earth had become too powerful, too defiant, and it was time to extinguish it before it became an even greater threat. As the news spread across Earth, panic began to set in. Some called for immediate negotiation. Others wanted to prepare for war. But amid the chaos, there was one voice that stood above the rest. Hunter. The moment the message reached him, he knew what had to be done. His reputation was no longer just that of a hunter, it had become a symbol of humanity's spirit, its refusal to surrender. And for the first time, he knew that the fight wouldn't just be for survival, it would be for the soul of humanity itself. Hunter didn't waste time in formulating a plan. He had faced impossible odds before. But the Empyrean were a different kind of adversary. They were an ancient species, masters of both diplomacy and warfare, capable of bringing entire civilizations to their knees with a single command. Their fleets were vast, their technology incomprehensible, and their will unbending. But there was one thing the Empyrean had overlooked: humanity's most powerful asset, the human will. Hunter knew the path would be difficult. He immediately sent word to Earth's leaders: we stand together, or we fall alone. Earth's military and civilian forces, united by Hunter's unshakable resolve, began to prepare. They knew the odds were insurmountable, but they also knew one thing: the only way they could lose was if they stopped fighting. And that, no matter what the Empyrean thought, was not something humanity would ever do. Hunter gathered a coalition of Earth's greatest military minds, scientists, and engineers to devise a strategy. Earth had no fleet that could match the Empyreans, no weapons powerful enough to challenge them. But what they had, Hunter believed, was the ability to outlast, to draw the Empyrean into a fight they could not win. They built a weapon, not a weapon of destruction, but a weapon of endurance. It was a last-ditch effort, a gamble of survival. They created a series of cloaked, self-replicating warships that could infiltrate the Empyreans' fleets, strike, and disappear. The ships would be small, untraceable, and impossible to destroy in large numbers. It was a way to wear down the Empyreans' forces, to drain their resources slowly until they realized that humanity would never stop fighting. As Hunter prepared for the mission, he looked out into the stars. He had been to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, hunted some of its most dangerous threats, but now, he was going to fight the greatest empire the universe had ever known. And he would not stop until Earth had been saved, or humanity was no more. The first battle took place in deep space, near the outer rim of Earth's solar system. The Empyrean fleet arrived in full force, a spectacle of power and might that would have overwhelmed any other species. Their ships were designed to intimidate, and they wasted no time in setting their sights on Earth. But as the Empyrean forces made their first strike, something unexpected happened. The first wave of their ships was met with resistance, not direct force, but a series of calculated, precise attacks that crippled their communications and threw them into chaos. Hunter's cloaked ships, operating in small, coordinated swarms, cut through the Empyreans' defenses, striking with surgical precision before vanishing back into the dark void of space. The Empyrean didn't know what hit them. They had never encountered an opponent so persistent. Each wave of their forces was met with resistance, each assault slowed by human ingenuity and refusal to stop. Hunter's strategy worked. The Empyrean forces, though vast, were not invincible, and as weeks passed, the Empyrean High Council began to realize something they had never considered: they could not defeat what would not be defeated. After nearly 2 months of continuous engagement, the Empyrean finally relented. They had underestimated the resilience of humanity. They had seen it firsthand. No matter how many ships they destroyed, no matter how many troops they sent to Earth, humanity's will remained unbroken. The High Council reached out again, but this time, the message was different. This time, it was a surrender. We acknowledge your persistence. We recognize your strength. Humanity shall not be subjugated. It was a victory for Earth, and a victory for Hunter. The Empyrean had come to understand something that the universe had known for a long time. Humanity was a force that would never yield, a species that would always rise, no matter how dire the situation. Hunter had once again proven that there was no enemy, no matter how powerful, that could defeat a human who refused to stop. The legend of the persistent hunter had grown even more legendary, now a myth among the stars. Humanity was not just a species to be tolerated, it was a species to be reckoned with. The galaxy would never forget the lesson it had learned. Persistence was not just a trait of humanity, it was its ultimate weapon. And Hunter, with his unwavering resolve, had taught the galaxy that lesson the hardest way possible, through relentless, unyielding persistence. End of Part 4. The Persistent Hunter, Best HFY Stories, Part 5. The galaxy had settled into a new era of peace after the Empyrean's reluctant surrender. Humanity, under Hunter's guidance, had established itself as one of the most respected and feared species in the known universe. With the defeat of the Syndicate, the Reavers, and the Empyrean, Earth's place among the stars was no longer in question. It was a testament to humanity's spirit, their refusal to be broken, no matter the odds. But Hunter knew that peace, like all things, was fleeting. The stars, vast and endless, had their share of dangers, and while the galaxy had been made safe from some of the worst threats, there were others still lurking in the shadows. Hunter's instincts had never let him down before, and now, even with the calm that followed the Empyrean War, he felt it again, the stirring, the call for action. A new storm was coming. The message arrived without warning, a cryptic signal that reverberated through all channels, bypassing secure systems and encrypted networks. It was a distress signal from a distant, unexplored region of space. A lone human colony had vanished, along with all of its inhabitants. Their last communication had been a short transmission, a simple plea. The stars are dying. We are not alone. Hunter didn't need to hear more. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and his hands instinctively tightened around the controls of his ship. This was different. This was something beyond even the most powerful forces he had ever faced. The transmission led Hunter to the farthest reaches of known space, into a region so remote that even the most advanced star maps barely showed it. It was a place where the light of the stars was dim, as if the very fabric of the universe was weakening, shying away from whatever lay ahead. Hunter had no doubt that he was walking into another fight, but this time, he knew it wouldn't be the typical battle of strategy, tactics, or even technology. The feeling gnawing at him told him this was something far older and far more dangerous. The colony world was nothing like Earth. It had been a bustling hub of scientific research, home to a thriving human settlement. But now, as Hunter approached, it was eerily silent. The once vibrant cities stood abandoned, their lights dark, their buildings crumbling. No signs of life remained. Hunter's boots hit the ground with a dull thud as he stepped onto the planet's surface, the air heavy with the scent of decay and something darker. He was alone, save for the lingering whispers of his own thoughts. He had been sent here to investigate, but it was clear to him that the danger was far from over. He scanned the area, using every sensor at his disposal. There were no readings, no signs of life. But then, a flicker, a faint pulse that reverberated through his equipment. Something was out there, something hidden in the shadows. Hunter pressed forward, his every step calculated. As he made his way deeper into the remains of the colony, he felt the air grow colder, thicker with an oppressive force. Then, he saw it, a massive structure, unlike anything humanity had ever built. It was an ancient temple of sorts, its surface covered in strange symbols that pulsed with a faint, eerie light. Hunter entered the structure, his heart pounding, knowing that whatever lay inside was not just a mystery, it was a threat. Within the depths of the temple, Hunter discovered what had caused the disappearance of the colony, an ancient entity, buried long before humanity had even begun to explore the stars, had awoken. It was a being older than the galaxy itself, a creature whose very presence bent reality. It was known as the Dread Star, a force of unimaginable power, capable of warping time and space, feeding off the life force of entire civilizations. The Dread Star had been dormant for eons, its power dormant beneath the surface of this forgotten world. But now, something had stirred it, something that called it back to life, and with it, it had begun to consume the very energy of the planet, killing every living being it came into contact with. Hunter's mind raced as he realized the scope of the threat. The Dread Star wasn't just a weapon, it was a force of nature. There was no negotiating with it, no fighting it in the traditional sense. This was not a battle of strategy or strength. This was a fight for survival. But there was one thing the Dread Star had never accounted for: humanity's will to survive. Hunter's mind clicked into overdrive. He had no weapons capable of defeating such an ancient entity, no technology strong enough to challenge it. But he did have something. He had the one thing the Dread Star could not comprehend: the human spirit. He activated a special signal, one that had been developed long ago, a signal designed to disrupt alien technologies that relied on psychic or energy-based manipulation. The signal pulsed through the temple, vibrating the very air itself. The Dread Star's presence, which had seemed invincible only moments before, began to waver. The creature's immense power faltered, as though it had been shaken by the human resistance it had never anticipated. Hunter took a deep breath. This was the moment. The battle was no longer one of force. It was one of endurance. The Dread Star could overwhelm any other species in a heartbeat. But humanity had something no other species did: the ability to keep fighting, to keep pushing forward, even when every ounce of energy had been drained. Hunter didn't fight the Dread Star head-on. Instead, he outlasted it. He used every trick he knew, hacking into the temple's ancient systems, using its own technology to weaken it. He created a feedback loop, turning the Dread Star's power against itself, forcing it to consume itself in a spiral of energy that it could not control. 4 days, Hunter fought alone, surviving on nothing but his unyielding persistence. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Dread Star was defeated. Its power collapsed in on itself, its ancient form disintegrating into nothingness. As the dust settled, Hunter stood alone in the ruins of the temple, breathing heavily, but victorious. The galaxy would never know how close it had come to utter annihilation, how close humanity had been to the brink of extinction. But Hunter knew. He had faced something older, more powerful, and far more terrifying than anything he had ever imagined. And he had won, not with superior weapons or technology, but with the very thing that had always made humanity the galaxy's greatest threat: their persistence. Humanity had once again survived, and Hunter, as always, would continue to fight, to protect, to endure, and to ensure that no force in the galaxy would ever extinguish their will to live. End of Part 5. The Persistent Hunter, Best HFY Stories, Part 6. It had been years since Hunter had faced the Dread Star, years since the galaxy had been on the edge of annihilation. The universe had quieted after his victory, and for a time, the stars seemed a little safer. Humanity had solidified its place in the galactic community. No longer just a species to be tolerated but one to be respected, perhaps even feared. But peace, as Hunter had learned, was a fragile thing. Even in the silence of the stars, something new, something dark, was stirring. The old enemies had been vanquished, and the galaxy had begun to forget the threat that Hunter had once represented. But Hunter knew the truth: there was always something lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. This time, the danger wasn't a race or an empire, it was something more insidious, something older than even the Dread Star. It was a force known only as the Void. The Void was a concept as much as it was a reality. It was said to be an ancient, predatory force that existed outside the known boundaries of the galaxy. In the deep, cold spaces between stars, it was not a civilization, nor a race, but a dark, almost sentient emptiness that consumed everything in its path: worlds, ships, entire solar systems. The Void didn't conquer, it erased. It left nothing but silence in its wake, a black nothingness that no one could escape from. Hunter had heard whispers of the Void, stories that had been passed down in hushed tones, but until now, he had never believed them. The concept seemed too fantastical, too terrifying to be true. But now, there were reports of entire star systems vanishing without a trace, entire civilizations collapsing into nothingness. And then the message came. It was another distress signal. But this time, it wasn't just a single colony or world, it was the entire sector. An entire region of space, once thriving with life, had suddenly gone dark. No communications, no survivors, only the cold emptiness of the void. Hunter's ship cut through the void of space, heading toward the sector that had been swallowed by this terrifying new enemy. The data was scarce, but one thing was clear: whatever this was, it was more than just a threat. It was a force that could reshape the galaxy itself, and the more Hunter thought about it, the more he realized the magnitude of what he was facing. No enemy, no matter how powerful, had ever completely erased an entire sector before. This was something new, something that couldn't be fought with firepower or tactics. This was a fight for the very fabric of reality itself. As he neared the epicenter of the disturbance, the air around his ship seemed to distort. The stars, once so bright and full of promise, now appeared to flicker and fade, as though the universe itself was being drained of its light. The void stretched out before him, vast and unyielding. He arrived at the center of the anomaly, a barren, dead system. The planets were gone, devoured by something invisible, but there was something left, something faint, a signal, a pulse of energy, so weak and distant, it was almost imperceptible, but Hunter's sharp senses caught it. It was a cry for help. Hunter's ship followed the signal, and deep within the heart of the system, he found the source, a single station, floating in the emptiness. It was a human outpost, one of the few that had been established in the sector, and it was still operational, though barely. The survivors were holed up inside, huddling in the darkness, terrified of whatever was coming for them. The station commander, a weary and battered woman named Captain Lena Vasquez, greeted Hunter as if he were a beacon of hope. "We didn't think anyone would come," she said, her voice breaking. "We've been running, hiding. The void, it's not just empty space, it's alive. It's coming for us." Hunter's mind raced as she explained. The void wasn't a physical enemy, it was a presence, a force that bent space and time, erasing everything it touched. It didn't just destroy matter, it seemed to undo existence itself, erasing even the memory of the things it consumed. Entire worlds had been wiped out, their histories lost as if they had never existed. And now, the void was closing in on this last outpost, the last bastion of humanity in the sector. The battle was unlike anything Hunter had faced before. There were no fleets to fight, no armies to destroy, there was only the void. As Hunter tried to organize a defense with the survivors, the first wave hit. It came not in the form of weapons or ships, but as a wave of nothingness. The station's systems began to fail, one by one. The lights flickered and dimmed, the air systems faltered, and the comms died. Time itself seemed to stretch and contract in ways that no human could comprehend. Hunter knew that fighting the void directly was impossible. He had faced unimaginable foes before, but this was different. This was not a battle that could be won with weapons or tactics, it was a battle for existence itself. With the help of the survivors, Hunter began to piece together a plan, a last-ditch effort to fight back. They would use the station's power core, amplifying the remaining energy to send a pulse of distortion into the void, hoping to disrupt its influence. It was a long shot, but it was the only chance they had. As the void's presence grew closer, Hunter knew time was running out. The pulse had to be sent, and it had to be strong enough to reach beyond the station, to the heart of the anomaly itself. The survivors were preparing to leave, to flee, but Hunter remained behind. He couldn't leave them to face this alone. When the void finally arrived, it came as a consuming darkness, sweeping through the station. The walls groaned and cracked, and the air grew thick with the pressure of a reality that was bending under the void's will. But Hunter, with his determination, stood firm. The pulse was ready. With a final, resolute move, Hunter activated the pulse. The station's power surged. The energy burst outward, distorting space itself. The void recoiled, as if it had never encountered such resistance. For a brief moment, there was light, bright, fierce light, and then silence. The void had been repelled. Hunter stood alone in the aftermath, his body exhausted, but his spirit unbroken. The station, though heavily damaged, still stood. The survivors had been saved, for now. The void had retreated, but Hunter knew this was not over. The galaxy had learned something new that day. The void could be pushed back, but it could never truly be defeated. It was a force that would always return. But so long as humanity existed, so long as Hunter lived, the Void would never find an easy victory. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge yet and had survived, not through might or weaponry, but through the one thing the Void could never take away, their will to fight. End of Part 6.